All right, so we're diving into your research today, and it looks like we're going to be focusing on leadership and management,
Right.
but with kind of a special focus on Afghanistan and South Asia.
Yes.
And it seems like you're really interested in how culture influences leadership styles.
Yes. Definitely a topic that I think deserves a lot more exploration.
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure.
Hmm.
And we're digging into Dr. Bahaudin Mujtaba's paper from the Business Ethics and Leadership Journal.
Great paper.
Yeah, and he brings up these really interesting concepts,
Yeah.
Guzaara, edaara, and rabariat.
Love those concepts.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost think about it like a trifecta.
Yeah.
You've got people skills, task management, and then the art of leadership itself all wrapped up in these terms.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is how Dr. Mujtaba uses a really unexpected example to illustrate these concepts.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the sports stadium.
Exactly. The design of a sports stadium can actually tell us a lot about cultural dynamics and leadership choices.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get into that. But first, let's unpack these terms a little bit.
Sounds good.
So Guzaara, it's often translated as getting by, but it feels like there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah. Getting by is a very simplistic translation, I think.
Right. It's not just survival. It's about thriving within a specific cultural context.
Exactly.
And Dr. Mujtaba really highlights the importance of patience,
Mm-hmm.
finding those win-win solutions, and really preserving those relationships even when things get tough.
Absolutely. And it's something that's learned from childhood. It's deeply ingrained in the culture.
It's not just a set of rules. It's like woven into the fabric of everyday life.
Exactly. And you can imagine the impact that has on decision-making, not just in personal interactions,
Right.
but in business, in leadership, even in how organizations function.
It's almost like Guzaara kind of sets the stage.
Yes.
And then edaara comes in as the director calling the shots.
I like that analogy.
So this is where we get into the more task-oriented side of things.
Mhm.
We're talking discipline, order, following the rules.
Classic management principles.
Yeah, setting goals, organizing resources, keeping things moving.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Mujtaba points out that edaara, while essential, needs to adapt.
Oh, okay, so we're not just talking about sticking to the old ways of doing things.
Not at all. We live in a world that's constantly changing, right?
Right.
And there's this tension between tradition and the need for progress and innovation.
Yeah, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes you need to kind of reshape the peg a little bit to make it work.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got Guzaara, the art of people,
Mm.
and edaara, the science of getting things done.
Right.
Where does rabariat, true leadership, fit into this equation?
Rabariat is the culmination of both.
Oh,
A true leader in this context isn't just someone with a fancy title.
Mhm.
They've mastered both Guzaara and edaara.
So it's about understanding the nuances of when to prioritize relationships, when to push for results,
Exactly.
when to hold steady, and when to embrace change.
It's like being a conductor of an orchestra,
Oh, like that.
bringing together the different instruments of Guzaara and edaara to create a harmonious symphony.
I love that analogy.
And the key is balance. Too much emphasis on one or the other can really throw things out of whack.
And that kind of brings us back to that stadium example, right?
Stevie.
Dr. Mujtaba dives deep on this one.
He does?
He describes this brand new national stadium built with pride, you know, all the bells and whistles, but the seating is a nightmare.
Total nightmare. Imagine this. You're at a big game. National pride is surging, the energy's electric.
Yeah.
And you're crammed into a seat with barely enough room to breathe, let alone cheer.
Not exactly the experience you'd hope for.
And Dr. Mujtaba suggests that this seemingly simple design flaw could actually be a symptom of Guzaara gone awry.
So how does that work?
Well, think about it. If you're a worker on that project
Yeah.
and you notice the seating is going to be a problem, right?
Right.
Do you speak up?
Or do you stay silent to avoid causing conflict?
Exactly. That desire to maintain harmony and avoid rocking the boat, it's a key part of Guzaara.
But in this case, it might have led to a less than ideal outcome.
It makes you wonder how often this happens in other contexts.
It really does. And it's not just about speaking up.
Right.
Dr. Mujtaba also suggests that edaara mindset, that focus on getting things done quickly and efficiently,
Yes.
might have also overshadowed concerns about the long-term usability of the stadium.
It's possible.
So it's almost like they were so focused on checking off the boxes that they missed the bigger picture, the fan experience.
And that's a common leadership trap, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes the pressure to deliver results can lead to compromises that we later regret.
That's so true. So the question for you listening is, if you were part of that project,
Yes.
would you have spoken up?
What factors would influence your decision?
And maybe even more importantly, how can leaders create a culture where people feel comfortable raising concerns, even if it means challenging the status quo?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll continue to explore as we dive deeper into Dr. Mujtaba's research.
This stadium story really does set the stage for understanding the complexities of Guzaara and edaara, how they can be both assets and potential pitfalls.
It's all about navigating that tension, finding that balance.
It's a reminder that leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about creating an environment where the best decisions can emerge.
Absolutely, and that often means understanding the cultural forces at play.
Those unspoken rules that influence how people think and behave.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with Guzaara and edaara, the yin and yang of Afghan leadership.
I like that.
But Dr. Mujtaba goes beyond just defining these terms.
Yes, he does.
He brings them to life through some really compelling stories.
He's a great storyteller.
Like the one about the hot-tempered teenager.
Oh, yeah, that one always sticks with me.
I mean, it's so relatable, even if you're not from Afghanistan.
It really is.
I mean, who hasn't had a moment where they let their emotions get the best of them?
we've all been there.
So tell us about this teenager. What happened?
Well, she was brilliant,
Okay.
passionate, but maybe not always aware of how her words landed.
Hi.
She was constantly butting heads with her parents, pushing back against tradition.
Okay.
And one day, she really let loose on her mother,
Oh.
saying things she later regretted.
Oh, those moments can be rough. They can be rough. We've all been there.
So what happened? Did her parents ground her, give her the silent treatment?
Her grandfather, a wise old man, decided to take a different approach.
Okay.
He gave her a unique punishment.
Oh.
He told her to hammer 500 nails into the wooden fence,
Okay.
1 inch apart in a perfectly straight line.
Okay, that's a pretty specific punishment.
It is.
I'm starting to see where this is going.
It took her hours to finish.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Imagine the patience and focus that required.
Yeah.
But when she was done, he told her to pull all the nails out.
And even though the nails are gone, the holes remain. Such a powerful visual metaphor, right?
It is. It really speaks to the lasting impact of our words and actions.
Even after we apologize.
Yeah, we can't always erase the hurt we've caused, but we can learn to be more mindful
Absolutely.
of our words and our actions, and that's where Guzaara comes in. It's not just about avoiding conflict, it's about actively cultivating harmony and considering the impact we have on others.
I love that.
It's about understanding that our actions create ripples, and those ripples can affect the people around us even if we don't see it immediately.
And think about how that applies to leadership.
Oh, yeah.
A harsh word, a thoughtless decision. It can leave a lasting mark.
On a team, on an organization.
Exactly.
So if Guzaara, in a leadership context, it's about building trust.
Fostering collaboration.
Yeah, and creating a culture where people feel safe and respected.
It's about leading with empathy and understanding.
Exactly. And this teenager story is just one example of how Dr. Mujtaba brings these concepts to life.
Yeah.
Making them relatable and actionable.
He also tackles some really challenging ethical dilemmas, like the one about the child laborer.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Can you set the scene for us?
Imagine you're a manager,
Okay.
and you discover that one of your employees has hired a young girl,
Okay.
an orphan with no other means of support, to work in the factory.
Oh, wow.
It's a clear violation of the company's child labor policy,
Right.
but firing her would likely put her in a very vulnerable position.
It's a classic ethical dilemma. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Absolutely.
So how does Guzaara and edaara come into play here?
Well, Dr. Mujtaba suggests that a rigid adherence to edaara, just following the rules, wouldn't be the most ethical or effective approach in this situation.
I see, I see.
He argues for a more nuanced approach, one that balances compassion with accountability.
So it's about finding a solution that protects the child while also upholding the company's values.
Exactly. That might involve working with the employee to find alternative care for the child, providing educational opportunities, or even creating a system where the child can work in a safe and age-appropriate way.
Right, so you're using Guzaara to understand the context, the needs of everyone involved.
Yes.
And then leveraging edaara to find a practical and ethical solution.
Precisely.
It's a reminder that leadership isn't always black and white. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that navigate the gray areas with empathy and wisdom.
And that's what makes Dr. Mujtaba's work so compelling.
Yeah.
He's not just giving us a theoretical framework, he's showing us how these concepts can be applied to real-world challenges.
He's encouraging us to think critically about our own leadership styles and the cultural influences that shape our choices.
And he reminds us that we all have these mental tapes playing in our heads.
Ah, yes, the mental tapes.
Those ingrained beliefs and biases that can affect how we see the world and make decisions.
That's such an important concept and one we'll explore further in our next segment.
It's all about becoming more aware of those unconscious biases, how they impact our leadership, and how we can start to challenge them.
Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started. Okay, so before we were talking about mental tapes, right?
Right.
And I have a feeling we've all got a few of those playing in the background.
Oh, absolutely, all do.
Yeah.
The point that Dr. Mujtaba is making is that these ingrained beliefs that we have, often about different cultures or types of people,
Right.
they can really affect how we lead and how we make decisions.
It's just like we're walking around with these hidden filters.
Yes.
And they're coloring how we see the world.
Exactly, and we might not even realize they're there.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
So imagine a leader who has this mental tape that says, people from this particular region are not assertive enough.
Okay.
That unconscious bias might make them overlook a talented employee or misinterpret somebody's silence during a meeting
Oh, yeah.
because they're expecting them to speak up more.
It's almost like those optical illusions where you see one image,
Yes.
but then someone points out another hidden image and you can't unsee it. You're suddenly questioning everything you thought you knew.
That's a great analogy, and the same thing can happen when we start to examine our own mental tapes.
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable at first,
Right.
but it's really the key to becoming more culturally intelligent and effective leaders.
So how do we even begin to identify these mental tapes? I mean, they're often so subtle and deeply ingrained.
It takes a conscious effort,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Dr. Mujtaba suggests paying attention to your gut reactions,
Okay.
especially in cross-cultural situations.
Okay.
What assumptions are you making?
Right.
Why are you reacting in a certain way? Journaling can be a helpful tool for this.
It's like becoming a detective of your own mind,
Exactly.
noticing those moments of judgment or discomfort,
Uh-huh.
and then asking yourself, where is this coming from? Is this based on facts or is it a mental tape playing?
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
And another powerful technique is to actively seek out diverse perspectives. Talk to people from different backgrounds, read books and articles from authors who challenge your worldview.
So you're saying the more you expose yourself to different ways of thinking,
Yeah.
the more you can start to unravel those mental tapes.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about expanding our understanding of the world and challenging our own assumptions.
Exactly.
And that's a lifelong journey.
It is a lifelong journey.
There's always more to learn.
Always more to learn, but even small steps can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Start by becoming aware of one or two mental tapes that might be influencing your leadership. Once you've identified them,
Yeah.
you can start to challenge them and find new ways of thinking and behaving.
And this ties back to the concept of Robert, right? True leadership.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect.
No.
It's about being open to learning and growth.
It's about having the humility to admit that we don't have all the answers and the courage to challenge our own biases.
You know, it's fascinating how Dr. Mujtaba kind of weaves these seemingly disparate ideas together.
He does.
Afghan cultural concepts, personal anecdotes, and even practical leadership advice. It's not just an academic paper.
Yeah.
It's a call to action.
It is a call to action.
Yeah.
Like, he's really pushing us to think differently about leadership, to move beyond those traditional models
Yeah.
and embrace a more nuanced and culturally intelligent approach.
And he doesn't shy away from the tough questions like, how do we deal with ethical dilemmas in a way that honors both our values
Right.
and the cultural context that we're in?
And that's where that concept of balance becomes so crucial.
Right.
Finding that sweet spot between Guzaara and edaara.
We talked about the child laborer example earlier, but I'm curious, does Dr. Mujtaba offer any other examples of leaders successfully navigating these ethical gray areas?
He does. There's a fascinating case study about a company operating in Afghanistan
Okay.
that was struggling with employee theft.
Okay.
They had a zero-tolerance policy, which meant immediate termination for anyone caught stealing. But this was causing a lot of resentment and hardship, especially given the economic challenges that many employees were facing.
That's a tough situation.
Yeah.
It sounds like edaara was being strictly enforced, but maybe at the expense of Guzaara.
Exactly. And the company was starting to see the negative consequences: low morale, high turnover, and a lack of trust.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So they decided to try a different approach, one that was more aligned with Afghan cultural values.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did they do?
They introduced a system based on restorative justice,
Okay.
which focuses on repairing harm and restoring relationships rather than just punishment.
I see.
They also created a hardship fund to provide financial assistance to employees in need.
So instead of just firing people who stole them, they tried to understand the underlying reasons and offer support.
Exactly.
That takes a lot of courage, especially in a business context.
It does, but the results were remarkable.
Oh, wow.
Employee theft decreased dramatically, morale improved, and the company developed a reputation for being fair and compassionate.
That's amazing.
They found a way to balance edaara with Guzaara, upholding their policies while also showing empathy and understanding for their employees.
It's a powerful example of how cultural intelligence can lead to better outcomes, both for the organization and the individuals involved.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that leadership isn't always about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask the right questions,
Yeah.
to listen to different perspectives,
Yeah.
and to find solutions that work within that cultural context.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways for our listener?
What can they do to start applying these concepts in their own lives?
Yeah, in their own leadership journeys.
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Start paying attention to how cultural values influence your own leadership style and the dynamics within your team or organization.
It's like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing the world from a different perspective.
Exactly.
Ah.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, to seek out different perspectives, to challenge your own assumptions.
And remember, leadership isn't a destination.
It's a journey.
There's always room for growth and development.
And Dr. Mujtaba's research gives us a roadmap for that journey,
Yeah.
guiding us towards a more balanced and culturally intelligent approach to leadership.
Wow. We've been on quite a journey with Dr. Mujtaba's research,
We have.
exploring these fascinating Afghan concepts, Guzaara, edaara, and Rabariyad. I feel like I'm seeing leadership through a whole new lens.
It's amazing how much we can learn from other cultures.
It really is.
You know, these concepts might be rooted in Afghan tradition,
Yeah.
but they really have universal applications.
It's like we've been given this new toolkit
Yes.
for navigating the complexities of leadership, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly interconnected.
Absolutely. And one of the most valuable tools in that kit is this idea of balance.
Right.
We've talked about how too much emphasis on Guzaara can stifle innovation, while too much edaara can lead to a very rigid top-down approach.
It's like that classic tightrope walk. You need to find that perfect point of equilibrium to stay upright and move forward.
Exactly. And Dr. Mujtaba emphasizes that finding that balance is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's a dance between honoring tradition and embracing change.
He even uses the analogy of a master chef,
Yes.
carefully adjusting the ingredients to create a perfectly balanced dish.
I love that analogy.
Sometimes you need a little more spice, sometimes a little more sweetness. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve.
And a skilled leader is like that chef constantly assessing the situation,
Right.
the needs of their team, the broader context to determine the right blend of Guzaara and edaara.
Now, one area where this balance seems particularly crucial is in conflict resolution. We've seen how Guzaara can lead to harmony and cooperation.
Right.
But can it also be a tool for resolving disagreements?
Absolutely. In fact, Dr. Mujtaba argues that Guzaara can be incredibly powerful in conflict situations.
Okay.
By focusing on shared goals, finding common ground, and prioritizing relationships. Even seemingly intractable conflicts can be resolved peacefully.
It's like building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly.
Finding ways to connect with the other person, even if you disagree with their viewpoint.
And it's about understanding that conflict isn't always a bad thing.
Oh, interesting.
It can be an opportunity for growth, for innovation, for finding creative solutions that benefit everyone involved.
So instead of avoiding conflict or trying to suppress it,
Right.
a leader skilled in Guzaara might actually lean into it,
Yes.
using it as a catalyst for positive change.
That's the idea. And it's a skill that's becoming increasingly important in today's world where we're constantly interacting with people from different backgrounds and perspectives.
It's about moving beyond that win-lose mentality and embracing a more collaborative and inclusive approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
what's the one thing you hope our listener walks away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of cultural awareness. Whether you're working in Afghanistan, South Asia, or anywhere else in the world, Understanding the cultural values and norms that shape people's behavior is essential for effective leadership.
It's about going beyond the surface level,
Yes.
beyond stereotypes and assumptions, and really trying to understand the why behind people's actions.
And remember, cultural awareness isn't a one-time thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and being open to new perspectives.
It's like learning a new language.
It is.
It takes time, effort.
And a willingness to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah, but the rewards are immense.
Absolutely. The more culturally intelligent we become, the better equipped we are to lead, collaborate, and create positive change.
In our communities and in the world.
Exactly.
It has been such a thought-provoking journey.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools and perspectives to bring to my own leadership experiences.
Me too. And I hope our listener feels empowered to continue exploring these concepts and applying them in their own unique way.
So as we leave you to ponder all of this, here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay.
Think about your own cultural background
Mm-hmm.
and the values that have shaped your own leadership style.
Yeah.
How might those values be perceived by others from different cultures?
That's a great question.
And how can you leverage your cultural strengths while also being sensitive to the perspectives of others?
That's a great question to reflect on. It's about finding that balance between staying true to yourself and adapting to the context you're in.
It's about leading with both your head and your heart, your mind and your gut.
Beautifully said. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you today.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.